Hi, in this video we are going to cover how to fix some flaws in photos, because oftentimes when we take our photos they're close to perfect but not quite perfect, right? Or sometimes they're pretty far away from perfect, which is perfectly fine. Haha, joke. But we have a lot of tools at our disposal that we can use to fix any flaws that we have in our photos. So go ahead and start by opening up this document in Photoshop. To do that, go to File and Open, navigate to wherever that photo is, and then go ahead and open it that way. Do not create a new document and place this into that document. It makes your life a little bit more complicated. Okay, to start, I'm going to zoom in, so I will hit Control and plus on my keyboard, and I'll zoom in, pan around to this first photo at the top here. So we're just going to start at the top and work our way down. And in this photo, we are going to, sorry, I should stop trying to do that. But in this first photo, we are going to remove this group of people to the right here. So we have two sets of people. We're going to remove the one to the right. It sounds like a complicated task, right? But it is actually not that hard at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my lasso tool. You don't necessarily have to use your lasso tool. You just have to select this group of people in some way, shape, or form. Lasso tool, I think, is probably the easiest. And make sure when you select the group of people that you select the entire group of people. If I would accidentally miss part of them, so maybe I missed both of their heads, I can add to that selection by choosing this option right here in my options bar, which is add to selection. And then I can go ahead and add his head as well as the top of her head. There we go. That entire group is selected. Now I'm going to go to Edit, Content Aware Fill. When I do that, it gives me a lot of options. It shows me a preview. I can change some of these settings, but for this little activity, this is perfectly fine with me. Notice that Photoshop does a decent job of filling in that now empty space with information from elsewhere in the image. And it's not exactly perfect, so if I were getting this photo ready to hang on my wall and blow it up big and make it, huge to cover half of my wall, I would probably do a lot better job, a lot more thorough job of fixing this little error. But for this activity, this is perfectly fine with me. So as long as that group of people is gone, that's great. I'll hit OK. And there they go. They are deleted. The finished result is affected by the way you make that selection as well as those options that you have selected as far as that tool goes. But again, for this, it is perfectly fine if it looks just like this. What I need to remember now before I move on is to deselect. So I need to Command or Control D to deselect. If I don't do that, then I'm going to run into troubles on down the line. So there we go. That is our first photo that we have fixed using our magical Photoshop tools. Okay, moving on down to our next image. What we're going to use now is the Content Aware Move tool. So this tool lives in the same sort of apartment building as these other tools here, but Content Aware Move tool is what we are looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and make a selection around this vapor trail, a little bit rough there, handy mouse work. I'll make a selection around there and then I'll try to move that selection over. I'm getting this error message here because I'll just go ahead and click OK. But that is because when I was making my selection and fixing this first photo, Photoshop added a new layer. So it's this background copy that it's actually trying to pull the pixels from, and there are no pixels right in this area where I'm selecting. So I need to click on background layer again, and then that layer contains the pixels that I'm using. So now I should be able to drag this over and we'll see what happens. We'll go ahead and drag it over, hit that check mark, and see if it fixes it for me. And honestly, sometimes I have luck with this tool and sometimes I don't. So I use this pretty much the exact same technique, and sometimes it fixes it and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to deselect. I'll try to make a smaller selection and see if that fits or see if that works. Try that again, move it over, hit check mark, and no, still not. So I'll step backwards. Sometimes it works if I select part of the sky and move it over the vapor trail. And that worked for the most part. I'm missing a little bit of an area down here, so I can redo that and see. Whoops. Oh goodness. I can make a selection and see if it'll move it over. Good. Perfect. Hit the check mark and there we go. Photoshop does a pretty good job of filling in that space. It's not perfect, but it did a pretty good job. Again, if I were to blow this up and make it huge, put it on my wall, I would probably want to take more time and fix this a little bit more accurately, but for our purposes for this activity, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so we'll keep moving on down. So when we were using that tool, we were using the content aware move tool. Up in my options bar, the mode that we had selected for that one was move, and that should be the default that automatically pops into this option here. Now we are going to use a different option for this next one. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm using the content aware move tool, but I changed the mode to extend. I'm going to select part of this little plant here, so just one sort of little branch, and then I will move that over, release my mouse, and then I will hit that check mark. And what that does is it doesn't remove this original part of the plant, it just adds on another one, so it's extending that image into that area that I want it in. So I can rotate that around if I want to, and then I'll go ahead and hit that check mark. And notice too that it retains that selection, so I can come back in and fill this plant in. I can make it look a lot more full than it originally was. I can deselect at this point if I want to, and maybe I want to come in and copy this little branch over here and fill that in into any empty spaces. I can also, if I want to, I could select some of these little flowers over here and maybe fill those in some of the space. So go ahead and add some extra foliage to this plant. When you're done, again, hit Control D or Command D to deselect. Great. We're making such good progress here. Okay, scrolling on down or panning on down, we are now going to use our spot healing brush. So what you'll probably notice is that as you start to do these things, you decide that one or two of these tools are your favorites and you use them like all of the time. To be honest, I very rarely use this this technique that we used in this image right here, but this one that we'll use here is one that I use a lot. So again, spot healing brush lives in the same place as that content aware move tool. So now I am just going to go over this power line and try to get rid of it. So I can do that, and I can be super careful about just going over the power line, but if you notice what I just did is I just went over the entire thing with my mouse and it magically made it disappear. So I'll go backwards. So it affected the end of this little sign here, but if I don't care, then I don't have to be that super careful. So again, I can just go over it in one fell swoop and let Photoshop work its magic. That one didn't, or that time it didn't work as well. I could come back in and fix this again, or I could be a lot more careful. So I could just select that power line, and where it intersects with this sign, I can kind of, I can approach that in sort of a stamping manner. So I'm just pressing and releasing my mouse rather than clicking and dragging like I just did right there. So if I need to be super accurate about something, like if I want to get rid of this little speck right at the top of my light post here, I can just click and release in that sort of stamping method. Again, if I wanted to, I could click and drag across as well. So that one again is one of my favorites. If you want to get really ambitious, what you could do is you could come down to the bottom part of this little image here, and you could get rid of all of these power lines everywhere. So even getting more ambitious are these power lines across this building. So that gets a little bit more difficult. I would recommend a lot smaller brush, but if you want to go ahead and give those a try, go for it. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. We are going to move on down to that next image there, and for this one we're going to choose a tool that lives in that same exact spot, which is the patch tool. Again, making sure all the time that I'm working on this background layer. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection around the banana slug. So I can be super accurate about that selection, or I don't have to be. I gave myself a big margin around the entire slug itself. But as long as I have the entire slug selected, honestly, it doesn't really matter. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose what I want Photoshop to fill that area with. So it is taking the pixels from this area that I had selected and it's filling them into that area right there. Once I am happy with that, I can go ahead and deselect. So Command D or Control D on your keyboard. There we go. I'm going to zoom on out, and now I have 5 fixed photos. They did have flaws in them, or what I thought were flaws, and now they are completely gone. So if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.